This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska. Welcome back to the show. Today we have, by popular demand, Mr. Daniel Agnello is joining us again. Welcome, Dan.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, anytime. Fellow history teacher, come on. So today we're going to talk about something that's actually very, very dear to me. I don't know if you guys knew this.
You were way too excited about this one, Pete.
I was. Well, so today we're talking about the Chernobyl. I don't know why I'm laughing and smiling. This isn't funny. We're talking about the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. But it is kind of dear to me in a sense because when Chernobyl happened, I was a little Polish boy that was 4 years old. And I lived in Poland at the time, which was about 600, 700. My city was about 700 miles away from Chernobyl. And the Chernobyl nuclear cloud went right over my country and my city.
Yeah, it was crazy, right, Pete? Because you were over 600 miles away, but you're still in range. Like, think about that. 600 miles away, and you're still in the contaminated zone, basically.
Absolutely. And you know what's crazy is that I'm 4, so I vaguely, if at all, my memories are probably from my parents telling me more so than me remembering it. But they actually, once the news came out of this, we were all called over, and everyone had to go to like a emergency room, and they shot us up with iodine. So I was shot up with Ki, potassium iodine, as a 4-year-old to counter radiation, to kind of try to protect my thyroid, and therefore I can never give blood in this country, in the United States, because I was technically part of the whole Chernobyl thing.
So you're basically poisoned.
Oh my God.
Right? I kind of glow at night, but like I don't tell anybody.
You're poisoned then. You're like yeah.
So anyway, so that's why I was excited about this episode, because like I lived it.
How else does it affect you? Do you have to has the iodine and stuff?
So the thing about the iodine is that
does it make you positive for tests or something for certain things?
Well, yeah. So you know how when you become a teacher, you have to test for TB. You have to take a TB shot for tuberculosis.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly because of what they shot me up with, I always come out positive on the TB test. No, I'm serious. So like when I was going to school here in the United States, when we immigrated, like elementary school, and every time I switched over schools to middle school and high school, they try to give me the TB test, and they're like, "Oh my God, you have tuberculosis," and I'm like, "No, I don't. Like, I really don't. So I always have to get a chest X-ray, especially when I became a teacher. Same thing. Like I had to prove that I don't have tuberculosis, and that's supposedly most of the Eastern European children because of the shots that we got after Chernobyl.
Don't worry, not TB, just radiation.
Just radiation. I know it's kind of scary. Yeah. And like researching this stuff, and I'm like, oh man, this isn't good, But but anyway, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about Chernobyl, guys.
All right.
First of all, I just want to point out, I don't know about you guys, but I am not in any way, shape, or form into like physics.
Yeah, there's a lot of physics talk with this. A lot of the
yes.
Yeah, are you going to explain the uranium and the nuclear?
Yeah, all that.
So I really try to dumb it down the best I could. I mean, my physics teacher in high school literally thought he was abducted by aliens, and I'm not kidding. He was actually told not to talk about it. So naturally, that's all we did is we tried to talk about it so we could get good grades and in his good graces. But so yeah, and I'm not so good at it. I mean, anybody want to take a shot? Because I kind of dumbed it down for myself in my notes, so I could give it a shot with the whole, hey,
yeah, that's what I basically did too. We don't want to like get into like, some of the physics were basically what caused a disaster. But really, I think as we talk about it, one thing that everyone has to keep in mind is you have to remember too, like the Cold War is going on at this point.
Yep.
And that's one reason why this disaster was so bad. The United States had their nuclear reactors, and we had a little incident too, that in 3 Mile Island, nowhere near this. Okay, this was a level 7. This was a level 7 nuclear disaster, basically, that released more radiation than even Hiroshima.
Yeah, like they say the cloud was like 100. I don't think radioactive cloud. Radioactive cloud from the explosion was equivalent to 400 Hiroshima atomic bomb explosions.
The isotopes that escaped were huge, but because of the Cold War going on, the Soviets didn't want to look bad, So that's one reason why they didn't tell anybody about it. And we'll get to that, I know. But they tried covering it up. They also, and really it was their, this is going to sound pro-American, but we're pro-American. It's just, they just didn't have the technology, and they tried to keep up with what the West was doing. And to do that, they didn't have the safety precautions of the West. And you saw this in their nuclear subs too. I'm sure you saw the movie or read the book, K-19, The Widowmaker.
Yep.
That's what I kept on thinking with this, because it was the same thing. They just didn't have the safeguards in place. Oh, nothing bad is going to happen. Nothing bad is going to happen. No, you're messing with nuclear power. Something bad can very easily happen. And really, because they weren't prepared, or because they weren't taking every precaution or had every scenario planned out of what to do, that's really why this happened. It wasn't just one reason. It was a combination. And a lot of times the US or the Western nuclear power plants had a bunch of different fail-safes that you'd have to have all these fail-safes fall apart and fail before something to happen. The Soviets didn't have that. They had, one fail up, I guess we're in trouble. They just didn't really think that far ahead, or they didn't really care. They just wanted to get the nuclear power plant up and running.
Yep. So I think the way we're going to break this down today, let's just kind of go over the background of like what actually happened, and then, talk about the explosion and kind of the lead up to it. And then we'll talk about the cover up that you just mentioned. And then after the cover up, we'll talk about the containment and the aftermath, affects environment, animals, people, so on and so forth. So background and the explosion, the cover up, and then the aftermath. Simple as that, right?
Sounds good. So we're kind of going nice chronological order here.
Yep. So, Dan, you got anything for like what happened here? You want to try to give it a stab, or?
Yeah. So the Soviet Union was kind of going through this time of stagnation with Brezhnev, and then Gorbachev is coming in, and like Tom was saying, the Soviet Union's trying to look good and make sure that these reactors and the cities, and this is kind of like a big statement for the Soviet Union that they have these nuclear reactors, and this is where their energy is coming from, is this powerful place, and they're trying to do a a test to see would these nuclear reactors be able to handle low power, or if there was a power
Power
problem at the
outage.
plant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from what I read is that they started this test, and they started turning off parts of the reactor to see how it would react with low power. And then from what I heard though is this was taking a long time. So they literally had like basically a B team come in for like the second shift overlooking it. And just one or two mistakes. You guys might know a little bit more about that, but it kind of sent it to a kind of like a point of no return where the reactor started going into meltdown mode. I guess they use graphite to kind of control the intensity of
Uranium.
whatever's going on in there to create the energy, and I guess it got to a point where it just couldn't stop heating up or powering, and
what it basically was, I'm sorry to interrupt, it all worked. They heated these rods up, and then they would put the rods in water basically, and that would boil the water, and that would turn these turbines, and that would produce the power. What happened with the graphite is that the material that they made out of the graphite was not, it worked, but it only worked so well. And the problem was it didn't cool instantly. That was the main problem. When they went back into like the storage, when they went back into the pods, whatever you want to call it. So I remember watching the Chernobyl, HBO did that special, and they showed.
Oh, did you see that? I never saw it, but everyone says
I watched
it.
It was really good. And I remember watching that and about this. And what happened was when they placed the rods in, they're supposed to cool instantly. The graphite rods didn't. They held on. That was a major difference between like Western power plants and the Soviet power plants, was the graphite rods. I'm not getting into the whole physics of it, but when they placed the rod inside of the cooling water, it didn't cool down the way. So when it went into the rod, it was still hot. And I'm not talking like it's just like warm to the touch. It's still like it would melt anything. And that causes a steam explosion, which is what sets off this reactor. Kind of like what Dan was saying, because they had this B team come on, and they really weren't prepared for this. And they were looking through manuals. They physically had manuals out, and there was nothing to do because the power dipped so low. It was like a test to see how low they could dip it and see if like the backup power would kick in. And they had manuals out, and they didn't know what they were doing. And the supervisor's just like, well, what are you doing? You have to do this test. And they're like, we don't know how to do this test. No one knows how to do this test. It's not in the manual. It's just like reduce the power even further. So it just kept on going. So it was that human error, but it was also a functioning error that they didn't know, but actually they did know about. It was told to them that using graphite has this problem could occur, but they just didn't think it would ever occur because they didn't think the power would ever go to zero. Not knowing, again, you have this B team there, they let the power go to zero, and there you go.
Yeah, I also
Kind
heard
of a perfect storm.
the fact that, because it is the Soviet Union and the amount of bureaucracy that comes with having, that type of government, that people weren't really just going to step in and just take initiative and make all these big changes in the moment. They needed to wait for the higher ups to tell them what to do and how to handle this problem. And there's a lot of there was so much government and bureaucracy involved that
Well, they were
responding
afraid
to it.
to. Because
Yeah.
they had that pressure. If they decided not to do it, why didn't you do this? And they're going to lose their job. Something's going to happen to them. They didn't have that. That's a major difference. That's a great point, Dan, with the whole capitalism versus communism argument. You have that Western idea. They kind of will think for themselves a little bit more, right? Talking sociology, the whole idea of free will, right? Or you're gonna the moralness that you're gonna do the right thing no matter what. I'm not saying people in Russia don't have morals, but in this type of structure, they're just going to do what they're told. They're not going to deviate.
Of course. I mean, you'd be punished. I mean, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
You would definitely be punished. I mean, my father would tell me when he was in school and under communist rule in Poland, they would literally teach him, this is, in the 50s and 60s, they would teach him to go home and basically spy on his parents. Like, if you hear anything, spoken against the state, please report it to your teacher. Like, insane stuff. So there's obviously that fear in here. And you guys explained this a lot better than I could, by the way. I mean, I've really dumbed this down. But so I don't want to kind of reiterate, but
so this explosion happens. Let's go from the explosion.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Explosion happens, and just kind of one point is what they're trying to do. They were trying to create a test, as Dan said, to see what would happen if electricity goes down at one of these 4 power plants, because there's 4 of them technically, 4 reactors.
Yeah, this is reactor 4. This is reactor.
Yes, this is reactor number 4. It's in US 1, and they're like, hey, you know what? We're just doing a test. What happens if the power goes out? Will it slow down the reactor? And basically, while they were doing this test, they screwed up, right? And this leads to an explosion at 1:23 a.m. On April. What day was it? April 26th. 6th.
Yeah.
So 27th, I guess now, right? So
26th, 27th. Yeah.
Yep. The radiator overheats. The steam builds up. Boom! It explodes, and it releases 8 tons of radioactive debris into the air. Right. Once this happens, as you guys already mentioned, first of all, a lot of people now believe that what was worse than the actual reactor blowing up was the cleanup. They said the cleanup itself was much deadlier than the original blast.
That's what people got. I mean, so I think 3 or 4 people died in the actual the steam explosion.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the people actually got out. It was then the cleanup, because remember, the Soviets are denying this at first. They're saying nothing's wrong. Yeah. And it wasn't until the Swedish government was getting alerts from monitoring air. Their atomic energy agency.
They thought something was wrong with theirs.
Yeah, they're like, no, but wait a minute, the isotope. So you can trace it somehow. You can trace the intensity of the radiation, able to trace back the source, like this tail, trace it all the way back to Chernobyl, which is in the Ukraine, right? Pripyat. What's the?
Yeah, that's the town.
It's right over there, and they kind of knew something was going on. And it's only then that the Soviets, we knew something was up too. We had satellite, what's going on there, but they admit it was nothing, or maybe just a small little problem. Or they only considered that was a minor problem at first, but then we started seeing or getting reports out they were evacuating more than 100,000 people from the area. That's when the global community realized something big is going on here. Okay, this isn't just a small. The Soviet Union wouldn't be doing this unless it was a massive accident.
Yeah,
because they're just getting rid of everybody. And people were told, you leave everything. They left their pets.
Yeah, but before everything. Town. No, they were told you'd be back in approximately at most 3 days.
Yeah.
Right. But even before that happened, first you have firemen to get on the scene, and there's some interviews with some firemen, and one guy was joking around at the time. Even he goes, "Oh, this isn't probably good. This is a nuclear power plant. We're going to be dead soon." It's just such an eerie thing for the guy to say.
That was the guy. Agnello was his last name.
Yep.
And he wound up having severe radiation poisoning to the point where at his funeral, they had to bury him in a lead coffin. His wife said his body was so swollen, his legs, his arms, they were so swollen, deformed, he had no clothes that could fit him because they couldn't fit around his body because of just that radiation. It just, the cells just burst basically. And it was a painful death apparently too.
Whoever's listening to this, you gotta go YouTube or check out some of the cleanup crew footage, because it is just some of the most surreal footage. It looks like it's from a movie, from a different dimension. It is.
Yeah, like a nuclear fallout, as if we did, like Terminator actually happened.
Right.
Nuts. So 28 workers and firefighters died from just, like you say, acute radiation poisoning, trying to clean this thing up. But the fire itself lasts for about total of like 15 days before it's finally put out, right? There's close to like 500,000 personnel involved in trying to contain this. And as you mentioned, at first, no one says anything to the people in the town that right next to it. And then it really took him like 36 hours before the Soviets are like, all right, we got to start evacuating these people. There's 115,000 people that live nearby. And that's what Tom was saying. Like, they got evacuated. But again, 36 hours later. And that's already when...
And the whole time they're soaking up radiation.
Exactly. And actually, you knew that already because most of them started vomiting, started getting headaches. They actually started getting like acute, poisoning, radiation poisoning within those 36 hours. And people are like, what the heck is going on, right? They're coming home. They can't see. They're tasting like metal on their tongues. They're like, something's not right. Something's not right. And then finally, after like 36 hours, buses showed up. And as you said, the buses showed up and they're like, you know what? Everyone, leave everything behind. Get on this bus. We're going to be gone for top 3 days, tops. Everything's going to be fine. Just get on the bus. And that's why this city, it's kind of left like a ghost town. I mean, these
eerie.
people,
it's very eerie.
They would leave a kettle on a stove. It was just
schools like that. There was an amusement park there. So that's the main thing that you see, like the Ferris wheel, like the merry-go-round, and everything's just kind of frozen there, just like some toys laying here and there. Because they just were told to leave instantly. And they just weren't ready for something like this. And the whole thing too, remember, this is in the 80s. And they tried robots at first. They did try getting robots, but they realized that the radiation was interfering with the electronics. They show that in the movie big time too, but I know they're all happy. Whole point is, supposedly the Americans had a robot that probably would have worked a little bit better, but they refused to take it. But they did agree to take one from the Germans later on. Like their robots, the Russian robots couldn't do anything. They wound up getting the German one, which kind of worked. They couldn't get too close. But most of the debris that was moved, only 10% was ever moved by a robot.
A lot of it was on the roof, right?
On the roof. They had to get it off the roof in order to seal it.
Yeah, it was crazy. I saw some footage of them trying to use like remote controls to like move these robots. And then, like you said, they ended up breaking down.
They couldn't handle it, yeah. And they weren't the best either at this point. That's why you had most of it was done by people, and they were only allowed to be up there for 90 seconds. And they had to sweep this debris off the roof. And they could only be up there for 90 seconds. And at that time, they were got about 25 rens, which is a huge amount of radiation.
Could you imagine? They would literally just be like, all right, a team of like 10 guys at a time or whatever. You got 90 seconds. Get up there with your shovels. Do what you can in 90 seconds and get back. Or else...
They had a stopwatch. Like, and they would tell you, all right, time's up, get back in. You had to run back in. A lot of times people fell. He fell. When he fell, his foot got caught. So he like ripped a little bit like his suit. And now he got radiation poisoning. There was stuff like that. But I want to get before we get anything else, Pete and Dan, I don't know if you saw the radioactive water. Did you see that part?
No, I didn't see anything about that.
So this was something, this is what really, the movie did show it. I remember reading about it. I remember hearing about it. This is what actually, who was the premier? It wasn't Boris Yeltsin. Gorbachev. He was the guy. Okay. And he's the one that steps in at this point. Because what they find out after, they were in no disaster, the world community knows this is a disaster at this point. But what they're finding out is that the steam, the water pressure is building up. And they have to find a way to release this water pressure, or it's going to cause a second explosion. And this second explosion is going to be massive. And they say if this second explosion takes place, it's going to make parts of Europe, parts of Western
inhabitable.
Europe,
yes, I saw that.
For thousands of years.
Yes.
So they need to find a way to do this.
As far as France.
Yeah, as far as it would just kill everything within an hour. Everything's going to be dead. So they're like, how we stop this from happening? And the only way to do it is they had to get people to volunteer. 3 men volunteered to wade through this radioactive water to go and release the valve. And it was more than just turning a valve. It was a lot more complicated than that. So they had these 3 engineers that did it, and they actually all survived.
Mm-hmm.
The one guy's name is Alexei Anarenko. He's like the most famous one that kind of led it. And they had to go through, they had to wade like waist deep in radioactive water, wearing these suits. They had to, go and release this water pressure, otherwise it was going to explode and take out Europe. It's really one of these stories that, like, I'm really surprised, like, more people don't know about, or there's not like more, even in Russia, like, there's not too many people know. They kind of kept it under wrap, but this guy saved Europe, like, and probably the world from radiation.
I actually read about the fact that, I remember now, I read about the fact that they didn't initially release that information because how close it was to literally almost turning Europe into a nuclear wasteland.
Yeah, because it would have, that's it. Like, it would just be that you think the area of Chernobyl is bad. It would have been nothing compared to what happens if there was that second explosion, because then everything would just be.
No, all three of the reactor, the other three reactors.
Yeah, it would have made a chain reaction. They all would have exploded.
Yeah.
So, and they all survived. The one guy just recently died like 2008, 2009 from a heart attack, but unrelated to radiation poisoning.
Those Eastern Europeans, they're just built different.
I don't know what it is. They were able to handle it.
The entire thing happens, as you mentioned. It's kind of covered up, and then the cleanup starts. Let's talk about some of the diseases and other things that this actually caused. Like the environmental as well as human and animal effects.
Just even today, like you said, it's still giving off a lot of radiation, and the main point is this part on the elephant's foot. You guys can Google this, like Dan was saying before. It's basically, it looks like an elephant. It's called the elephant's foot. It's like melted. It's the core that melted, and it's still radiating radiation today. This is one, you can go into parts of Chernobyl. It's kind of weird. I was watching this one quick video where the guy's like outside of it. You can see the plant where the dome is now, and he's like, look, the radiation's not high, but you just go like another part and the radiation's really high. And if you actually went to the elephant's foot, which no one's ever gone, they just sent like robots and cameras down there, that if you were exposed to it for 60 seconds, it would kill you. You wouldn't get out of there. That's how like intense the radiation still is from that point.
They say another 20,000 years before human habitation.
Yeah, and that elephant's foot will continue to be dangerous like that for another 100,000 years. Yeah.
And it's just eating through the ground it's on. So like eventually it might go through. It's just going to keep eating and eating and eating. Whatever the corium is that makes it up.
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
They poured concrete, they sprayed it with stuff, and it's not working. The concrete started to crack a couple years ago. I guess we can get into that a little bit later. But they had to go fix it, and they're not the fixing whatever you want to call it. The containment is supposed to continue until 2065 when they're still working on it. And that's the crazy thing too. What I found out was this kind of made me be like, I had to double check it. Was that after this reactor problem, the power plant was still functioning.
Yes, the three other ones went as far up to 2000. It was the last year.
Yeah, well, even after that, it was even after 2000.
Which is insane. People went to work.
2017, they were still going on.
Yep, in the same complex.
Yeah, which is giving off radiation. Because there was another disaster at Chernobyl in October of 1991. A fire broke out in reactor 2, but they were able to put it down before it got crazy.
Jeez.
And in 2017, there was a cyber attack. Someone actually hacked into the controls and started to mess with the controls. And that's when they started, we have to change this. We have to do something with this because people are, computer eyes were able to get into this because they just never put any like encryptions on it. So these hackers just hacked into it. So those Russian hackers, they hack elections and they hack
Jesus.
Gotta be careful.
Oh, Jesus. No, but in all seriousness, like you said, people went to work. I mean, and they say primarily because Ukraine was deficient in energy. I mean, they needed it. So people just went to work.
For that area.
Yeah, people went to work after this, which is insane. But kind of so what they build, to add on to that, sarcophagus, right? They build this huge concrete sarcophagus. It kind of encased the entire reactor, right? And the idea, as you said, was to prevent radiation from spreading. Still, inside, there remain about 200 tons of radioactive fuel. So this concrete, structure started breaking down. So they started creating, it was just finished actually a couple years ago, this like confinement structure. You guys could Google it. It's huge. It stands at like 260 meters wide, which means it could fit Titanic. Literally, the ship Titanic would fit widthwise. And it's like 110 meters high, which is taller than the Statue of Liberty. It costs about $3 billion. And this is like this huge confinement structure that was built. It's kind of cool because they build it on rails next to the nuclear reactor for, and then they slid it over the reactor. And they said that this is supposed to last, this confinement structure, for like 100 years before it starts to also deteriorate.
It's already starting to crack now.
Yep, which I'm saying, because the radiation's so high, which is crazy.
That's so awesome.
It's crazy, man. So now, diseases caused by the event, right? This is when I was looking at this, I'm sure you guys probably found this. This was kind of insane. Thank goodness I was born in 82 and not, 4 years later. Many doctors in Eastern Europe advise pregnant women to have abortions.
Yeah, they said over 150,000 happened.
Yes, because there's this fear that, your child's going to be born deformed, and, you can't risk it. So, like you said, thousands. It's just crazy. So thank goodness I was born before.
Yeah. Belarus got hit real hard, right? They kind of got the worst of it.
Real hard. Thyroid cancer, specifically in Belarus. So Belarus is a smaller nation that's kind of actually between Poland and Ukraine. Before the Chernobyl disaster, Dan, there was under 1 per 1 million people would have thyroid cancer. So 1 per every million. And by 1995, it was 100 per every million people. So
what that's called, P, I'm sure you saw that, was something called the Chernobyl necklace.
Yep.
And that was that horizontal scar that was done on the base of the neck to remove the cancer on the thyroid from the surgery. And he said that was very common, or you had such a huge round of cases in Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, Poland during that time, that it was just nicknamed. If you saw someone with that, like, oh yeah, that that's the Chernobyl necklace. That person got thyroid cancer from that Chernobyl disaster, from all that radiation. And it was very common in that area, part of Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why I was freaked out when they had to cut up my, thyroid stuff. What is it, 2 years ago? Scary stuff, man.
Yeah.
So, also in West Germany, Down syndrome peaked, right, for some 9 months in January of 1987. That people believe, and scientists believe, that it was related to Chernobyl, supposedly. Again, nothing is definite, but they said the peak was above. It was like 12 cases just in January of Down syndrome, which, again, unprecedented at the time, and it followed shortly thereafter the actual disaster. But so again, roughly 6,000 cancer cases have been linked to the event, but it's hard to really specifically pinpoint that they were caused by the event.
Yeah, and the Russians will never admit to it. Like, exactly, as far as that it caused deaths. They said no. There's like maybe 125 total deaths linked to Chernobyl.
Yeah,
they're not saying. Other people say no. It's more like 900,000. Like, it's that big of a difference.
Yeah. And did you read that mostly children were affected the most?
Yeah, that makes sense, because their bodies can absorb that amount of radiation.
Yep, and mostly thyroid cancer was the biggest outbreak.
Which is crazy though too, because there were people who decided to stay. A lot of the older people
still live there.
Yeah.
In that area, it's only like, it's not a lot, but they're not supposed to live there, but they do. That's basically what it is. Like,
yeah, when the army came and they were evacuating people, I guess some people have lived there for so long, and just whether they're farming there or just living their lives, they're like, I mean, for us to leave, you're basically just going to have to shoot us and drag our bodies away because we're not going anywhere. And the government was like, all right, have a nice day.
Yeah, they didn't have time to argue this, because that's been the soldiers. They knew a little bit more, like somewhat, what was going on. Not all of them, but somewhat. So they're like, listen, if they want us to get out of here, we have to get out of here. We're not going to stick around. So if you didn't want to leave, they weren't going to. They were like, trying to stay. We're getting out of here, because they didn't want to be there either.
True.
Yeah. Because a lot of them were then, when they started hearing about the radiation and they're still trying to get people to leave, they a lot of them started wearing like lead cups, because they didn't want to, like athletic cups, because they didn't want, like, they want to make sure that they didn't become sterile and stuff.
I saw that they call it the egg baskets.
Yeah, so they started wearing those, and they were like making them themselves, because they were like, we're not walking around here unless we have like protection.
Wow.
Because there were squads put in there that had to go and shoot like the feral dogs and stuff like that. Like, months later, they had to go in. They didn't want these dogs running away looking for food and like maybe contaminating other areas. So they had to go in there and shoot all the feral dogs and stuff, all the animals that were left behind and things like that.
And talk about animals. I mean, they're saying that now it's basically a huge wildlife sanctuary.
Yeah.
But there are some weird caveats to that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you saw this. Since then, now it's an abandoned city near Chernobyl, but not really abandoned in a sense, because you have bears, you have foxes. I mean, literally wildlife's living there. But what they're finding is, specifically in birds, they found a lot of different types of birds that were found with much smaller than normal brains, and specifically swallows. They have albino swallows, which is not a thing. They're only in and near Chernobyl. Also, deformed feet of birds, deformed tail feathers, tumors. There are also some cows exhibited some like nuclear, mutations near there.
There was some there, and they said animals as far away as Germany still has. They're find a lot of. They actually have to in Germany when you hunt game like deer and stuff like that, well, and like boar, you have to get it tested afterwards. And the lava, if it has too high a level of radiation, you're not allowed to, do anything with it because it's still contaminated. You still have that there. And I saw that, Pete. There's so many, like the animals are messed up. But it said one thing: the animals that did not come back, or a lot of insects did not come back to that area, particularly spiders. There's like virtually no spiders in that area. And again, it's because of the radiation. They just can't survive. They usually like those like darker spots. And
I was going to make a Spider-Man joke. It was going to be bad. It was going to be a dad joke. I'm like, nuclear spiders. I got all excited, and
but there aren't spiders there, so it wouldn't have worked.
I'm surprised that the animals are doing as good as they are, though. That's what I was expecting to see, some like two-headed frogs and stuff, but
yeah,
they got packs of wolves running around, and
they have wolves. But they do have wolves there. But that's the thing too. There was like that fake documentary everyone think is real, like the wolves of Chernobyl, which is supposed to be like these like wolves that are like giant. They're like 8 feet.
Yeah, like the Game of Thrones kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's fake. There's no giant mutated wolfhound running around Chernobyl, and so that would be cool at some level. But if they had those things run around, they're not going to have tour buses there and going stuff like that. Right. But the animals kind of just they realize that there's no people there, and they're kind of doing the trade off. They're like, yeah, they're getting like thyroid cancer, and it's like tough living, but it's a good trade off not to have human interference.
That's what it is. That's why they say that there's so much wildlife, because they're just left alone. But they like live in the buildings. Like it's insane. It's like Zootopia, the Disney cartoon, but like, a nuclear Zootopia. Nuts. So they're saying overall though, trees, right? Did you hear about, there's one area, particular area near that it was, yes, they turned into a red forest because all the trees just kind of burned through the radiation and turned red. Did they cut them all down and they buried them in big trenches, they said, or deep trenches. Still, when it comes to like diseases caused by the event, scientists are very divided. As officially, all right, attributed to the Chernobyl, there's 50 deaths, adult deaths, and 9 children. That's essentially what is officially attributed to the Chernobyl disaster. 50 people died plus 9 children.
There's more of it, obviously.
Yeah. So now there's some interesting numbers though. So there was about 100,000 reactor staff, right, that were exposed to radiation between the 3 different reactors. There was close to 200,000 workers overall over the entire span of cleaning this up that were involved in the recovery operations. However, now it's been 20 years or so. Only, it's terrible to say only, but only roughly about the 50 people or so died. So scientists are still very much divided on like, well, there's so many people. Like, how long will it take to see the effects of this on them? Again, it's only 20 years ago.
Radiation is very tricky. How you can absorb it, there's so many other factors with it. When I was reading about this, that they really don't know. You can't really tell what type of, like, unless it's high levels, how that radiation is going to affect a person. They might seem absolutely fine, then the next day they wake up and their hair's falling out, or nothing might happen at all. It's really like a person by person basis a lot of times on how this radiation is going to affect you.
Yeah. Did you see the idea of the flora and fauna? The idea that a lot of the plants afterwards started to thrive in the environment as well, which is weird. One particular is there's a fungus that exists that uses radiation to produce its own energy. Like radiation is its energy source, like you would think solar panels use sunlight. It's just crazy. You have these like nuclear mushrooms growing.
They're going to talk one day, and we're going to be fighting them in probably 50 years.
It's crazy.
For control of the planet.
Wow.
So do we have any fun facts? I mean, again, this is a kind of disaster, but do we have any interesting fun facts?
That mushroom one just blew my mind.
We know that there was so much nuclear radiation released in this disaster, but all the that in the 50s and 60s, the above ground nuclear weapons testing actually was released 1,000 times more radiation than Chernobyl did. So all those nuclear tests that were going on during that time, that was putting more radioactive isotopes into the atmosphere than Chernobyl did. The thing is, Chernobyl was much more concentrated. It was much more in one specific area. But yeah, so I mean, this is nothing new. We've been releasing radiation in this planet for a long time. This is a disaster that it didn't happen that long ago. Like I know you're saying you were a kid when it happened. I was a kid too, obviously. Dan, I don't know if you were even born. When,
No, not yet.
Yeah, when this took
Oh,
place.
you're young and
like I don't remember it, but I remember hearing about it like afterwards and stuff like that. And it was this. You have 3 Mile Island. That's why they kind of stopped building nuclear power plants, particularly in the United States after 3 Mile Island. You didn't see anymore. The Chernobyl disaster really made people scared. And then in 2011, we can't talk about Chernobyl without talking about 2011 with the Fukushima disaster.
the second largest.
Yeah, which was not as bad as Chernobyl, but it was a Category 7, and that was just man. That was remember Japan had that and had the tsunami like within a few months of each other, I believe, and that's still leaking radiation, and everything too.
I think we should also mention, and we kind of briefly touched upon this. I guess this would be the fun fact: the idea of tourism growing over the years.
Yeah,
like you could actually like plan a vacation to Chernobyl,
and it's like a big
like the guides go in there. Yeah, you get a pass. You know,
you got these Geiger counters with you to measure radiation.
Oh, it's crazy.
But you can go to the website, Chernobyl tourism, and they'll tell you like how much like what each thing is that how much money it costs and how to book it and what times a day you can go. Because there's certain times when they recommend you don't go, or certain parts you can go to. Basically, you pay money to get exposed to high levels of radiation. I'm not sure how that is, but again, that's it. Kind of shows you how Soviet Union, though now Russia kind of changed, right? Because now they would never do something like that. Now that's like capitalism right there. They're taking an opportunity and turning it to make profit.
Hey, that's something we would do. What are they doing over there? I was watching one of the tours, and they were like, they kept referring it to chest X-rays. They're like, oh, so if you spend a minute here, that's how many chest X-rays it equals, or that exposure to this and that.
Oh, wow. They said also there's a 40% increase in tourism since the HBO show premiered.
That was huge. Yeah,
now people are like, and like people see selfies, like, hey, like it's crazy.
Yeah, which is not because you think about this, like it's still leaking. I don't care. Like I'm interested in this sort of stuff and like history, but I'm not going to go to Chernobyl and take selfies. I don't know. It just doesn't like appeal to me because I don't think it's safe necessarily. Even though people say it's safe, but you never know. Like, what if that day something, the elephant's foot heats up again because it's still technically burning. That's what they say. It's not fire, but it's still technically burning. It's smoldering. It's still, like Dan was saying, it's still melting the earth around it. You want to go near this thing? I don't care how far away you are. I don't know. It's just
it is illegal. It's technically, according to Ukrainian government,
but they're not enforcing it.
Exactly, it's illegal to live in Chernobyl. However, in the surrounding area, right? However, they know for a fact that despite that it being illegal, there's still around 140 inhabitants that live in these zones, and a lot of them do like illegal tours for YouTube.
And they take artifacts and they sell them too. That's the one thing they're worried about too. I saw is that they go into like certain parts and they'll remove like pieces or like things, and then they'll sell these things. But these artifacts from Chernobyl, from that area, they're radioactive.
You're going to bring back a radioactive Atari back to the United States?
That's the thing. You're bringing back these radioactive elements, and it's like, again, like you're going to try to smuggle that, like carry it in your pocket. Like, go ahead. Like, I don't know. Like, it's probably not the smartest move. But again, that's why it's illegal, because it can do a lot of harm.
It is trippy to just see like the 1980s Soviet Union frozen in time. Like I've always known about Chernobyl, but again, like I would see, how many people died. I was like, oh, that's terrible. People had to move. But like, until I was getting ready for this podcast and really diving into it, I didn't realize like how terrible it almost really was for all of Europe. And then the heroicism of, how Tom was mentioning, all the guys they threw at it who just risked their life and health to save the rest of the continent.
Yeah.
They were told that too. Like, it wasn't like the Soviets saying, we're not telling you. They told them, they were telling them what was going on. And the movie does a great job of this too. Some of the people that were there the day it happened, they were put on trial. I don't remember the guy's name, but like he was the commanding officer, the director in charge. He was basically made a scapegoat for all of this.
Yeah, they sent him to prison, right?
He sent him to prison. He was there for, I think, like 10 years. And then when he got out, he went back to working in the power plants again.
Wow.
And he even said at the trial, this is a farce. I know you're just going to convict me. You want to blame it on me? Blame it on me. But it has nothing to do, with me. It was the faulty design. And then there was this woman, I can't remember her name. She basically pressured the Soviet Union to come out and say, no, it was these rods. That was a problem, because they planned on building a bunch of other reactors with the same problem. Like, we'll have more Chernobyls if we keep on building it with these graphite rods. We have to spend the extra money and get the different model, the different material. That will cool off instantly. That's not going to superheat the air when you put it into the water, or superheat the water.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys next week.
Take it easy. Enjoy. Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.